They say the mind stays alive long after the body shuts down. I learned that the hard way. It started with silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that screams in your skull when you realize no one can hear you, not even your own mouth. I could see, feel, and hear everything, but my muscles betrayed me. I was trapped in my own skin, a prisoner in a bed with tubes and blinking lights. And while I laid there helpless, my sister, the only family I had left, stood by my side and said 5 words that tore what was left of me apart. Maybe it's time to unplug. My name is Roger Whitman. I'm 67. 3 months ago, I had a stroke that paralyzed nearly every muscle in my body. The doctors called it locked-in syndrome. That meant I was awake, alert, fully conscious, but unable to speak or move. For a while, they thought I was in a vegetative state. My sister Linda was granted power of attorney while I was unresponsive. Linda, she used to braid my daughter's hair when she was little. We were close once back when we both still believed in happy endings, but money and bitterness eroded the years between us like acid on stone. She always thought I lived better than she did. She hated that I retired with a pension, that I had a cozy little house, a modest savings account, and no children left to inherit it. The accident happened while I was gardening. One minute I was trimming the hedges, the next darkness. When I woke up, I was in the ICU, my body numb, my mouth sealed, my chest rising and falling, only because of a machine. I thought the worst had passed. But no, the real nightmare hadn't begun yet. At first, Linda played the role of the grieving sister beautifully, holding my hand, wiping invisible tears, whispering sweet nothings like some saint. But it didn't take long for the mask to slip. I heard her talking to the doctors. He wouldn't want to live like this. He had no quality of life. He told me years ago he'd rather die than be a vegetable. Lies, every word of it. I had never said such a thing. She kept visiting less and less. And when she did, she came with questions like, has there been any change? But she wasn't asking out of love. No, she was waiting for that golden moment when they'd say I was too far gone to recover. I could hear her sigh when they said they needed more time. I could see the calculation in her eyes. One rainy Thursday morning, I heard her talking to the doctor in hushed tones just outside my curtain. He's not improving. You said the brain activity was minimal. We can't be sure yet. Look, I have the documents. He made me power of attorney. It's what he would have wanted. That was the first time I felt true terror in my life. Not when I collapsed, not when I woke up paralyzed, but when I realized the person who should be fighting for me was ready to end me. The next morning, she came in earlier than usual. I knew something was wrong the moment I heard her heels clicking on the tile floor. She never wore heels to the hospital. She stood at the foot of my bed, clutching a manila folder. Her expression was blank, businesslike, like she was closing a deal. She didn't look at me as she spoke. Dr. Marcus will be in shortly, she said, flipping through the papers. They'll need a final signature, then you can rest. Rest. She said it like a gift, like it was something I should thank her for. But I wasn't ready to die. I screamed inside my head, "Don't do this, Linda, please. I'm still here." But all I could manage was a flutter of my eyelids, and no one noticed. The nurse came in, adjusted my IV, smiled softly, and left. And still Linda stood there, organizing my death like a spreadsheet. I listened as she presented the forged documents to the doctor. Fake advance directives carefully fabricated to make it look like I had chosen euthanasia. I hadn't. In fact, I had no formal documentation at all. She was counting on the silence of my body to silence my will. It almost worked. When Dr. Marcus entered, his voice was calm but hesitant. "These are serious steps, Linda. Are you absolutely sure?" She nodded quickly. "It's what he told me years ago. He was very clear." "Still," he said, pausing beside my bed, "we've seen strange cases. Sometimes responses come late. I'd like to try another round of tests before making any final decisions." Linda's voice turned sharp. "You're just delaying the inevitable. You saw his scans." "I understand, but pulling life support is final. I'll request a second opinion." Her voice dropped low, venomous. "You're wasting time, resources, and frankly, he wouldn't want this circus." That was when I realized this wasn't just about my supposed wishes. She was growing impatient. Probably afraid something would change, maybe even afraid I'd recover. I stared at her with every ounce of hate I could gather. "I'm here. I see you. I know what you're doing." And still, no one saw me. Later that evening, the doctor came back along with a younger nurse I hadn't seen before. She checked my vitals, whispered something to the doctor, then looked at me curiously. "I thought I saw something, maybe just a reflex," she said. "Noted anyway," he replied. Linda rolled her eyes, pacing the room. "He twitches, so what? It's nothing." But I could feel something growing inside me, a surge, a twitch that wasn't random, a spark of will. The nurse looked me in the eyes. "If you're in there," she whispered, "try to blink, just once." I focused every ounce of strength I had on that single motion. My muscles trembled, my body convulsed slightly, and then I blinked. It wasn't big, it wasn't graceful, but it was real. The nurse gasped. Linda froze. Her face turned pale, her mouth slightly ajar. She stared at me as if seeing a ghost, and for the first time in months, I saw fear in her eyes. She didn't move, not a single step, just stood there gripping her purse so tightly her knuckles turned white. My sister, so poised, so collected, was unraveling before my eyes, and I relished it. The nurse leaned in, her voice trembling. He blinked. I saw it. Dr. Marcus immediately stepped closer. "Roger, if you can hear me, blink once." I blinked. Again. I blinked again. Linda stumbled backward and let out a dry, cracked laugh. No, it's just a nerve reaction. He's not really conscious." But no one was listening to her now. Dr. Marcus was already issuing orders. "Page neurology, bring in the EEG, full reevaluation." The nurse stayed by my side, gently squeezing my arm. "You're safe now. We saw you. You're in there." I wanted to sob from relief, but my body didn't allow it. Instead, I blinked again. My signal to the world I'm not gone. I never was. Linda tried to backpedal. She tried to rewrite her story mid-sentence. I wasn't trying to hurt him. I thought he told me once, years ago, if anything ever happened. No legal documentation supports that." Dr. Marcus interrupted coldly. "And you presented a document earlier that we now suspect may have been forged." That word "forged" hung in the air like poison. Linda's tone changed fast. "Wait, I didn't mean look. I just wanted to do what was right. I didn't want him to suffer." But her voice wavered, unconvincing even to herself. The nurse glanced at the clipboard, then at Linda. "You tried to unplug a conscious man. That's not mercy, that's murder." I blinked rapidly, not in distress, but in agreement. Let them all know what she had done. Within the hour, a neurology team wheeled in new equipment. Electrodes attached to my scalp machines humming as they monitored every flicker of brain activity. The results were clear. Within minutes, not only was I conscious, but my brain showed full responsiveness to external stimuli. "She's lying," the neurologist said bluntly after reviewing the data. "He's alert, cognitively intact. This is a classic case of locked-in syndrome." That was the final nail in her coffin. Linda started crying, then big theatrical sobs, hands over her face. I didn't know. But I remembered. I remembered the way she laughed on the phone with her lawyer, the way she smirked as she whispered about liquidating my assets, the way she called me a waste of space when she thought I was too far gone to hear. She had known. She had simply counted on me never blinking again. Security was called. She wasn't arrested yet, but they escorted her out of the hospital. Her cries echoed down the hallway, blending with the quiet beeping of my heart monitor. The sound of her being removed was the sweetest lullaby I'd ever heard, and for the first time since the stroke I felt hope. I had survived her, and the world knew it. Now the only thing left was to make sure everyone knew what Linda had tried to do. The days that followed were a blur of doctors' tests and blinking charts. I was exhausted but more alive than I'd felt in months. A team of specialists now surrounded me, devising a communication system using eye movement. I blinked to say, yes, moved my gaze to letters on a board to form words, and slowly, painfully, I began to speak again without making a sound. Linda, of course, didn't come back. After she was escorted out, she went quiet. No calls, no apologies, no explanations. I wasn't surprised. What could she say? Sorry, I tried to kill you. The hospital's ethics committee launched an internal investigation. The forged documents Linda had presented were being closely examined. They found inconsistencies in signatures dates that didn't match even a notary stamp that had expired 2 years before it was supposedly used. A formal report was prepared for legal review. But what haunted me most wasn't the near death or the betrayal it was that I had trusted her. For weeks I had clung to some sliver of comfort, thinking at least my sister is here. I imagined her by my side, praying for me, holding my hand. But no, she wasn't mourning a brother, she was waiting for a payout. A young speech therapist named Eva visited daily. She was patient, kind, and surprisingly blunt. "You're lucky to be alive, Roger," she said on day 4 of rehab, and even luckier to be heard. I know I blinked, then spelled out, "I'm going to tell everything." She smiled. "You should. You deserve to be heard." And so I began documenting, slowly, painfully, one word at a time. With Eva's help, I wrote my story, starting from the stroke all the way to that blink that saved my life. Every look Linda gave me, every whispered word, every forged page, I remembered it all. The hospital arranged a press release to bring awareness to cases like mine. Locked-in patients misdiagnosed. Families making life-ending decisions without true understanding. The media took interest. The man who blinked back, they called me. I didn't mind, as long as it got people to listen. But Linda, she stayed silent until one day she didn't. It was a Tuesday morning. The nurse wheeled in the laptop they used for me to communicate. I opened the messaging program they had set up for limited outside contact, and there it was. From Linda Whitman's subject, "Please don't do this" message. I made a mistake. I panicked. "Please don't ruin me. We're family." I stared at those words, each one slicing through me like a blade. Family. She had tried to sign my death like a dinner bill. She had watched me struggle and chose convenience. I closed the message. I never replied. Instead, I gave full permission for the hospital and legal teams to use my recordings and testimony. If justice was coming for her, I wouldn't blink it away. 'Cause I didn't need revenge. I needed the truth to be seen and never forgotten. The hearings began 2 weeks later. I couldn't attend in person. My body still weak-lunged, still dependent on partial assistance, but my voice was there, written through hours of blinking, transcribed by Eva and read aloud by a patient rights advocate. When they read my statement in court, the room reportedly went silent. My name is Roger Whitman. I was fully conscious when my sister Linda Whitman told my doctor to pull the plug. I blinked. I saw her face. And I remembered everything she said before she thought I was alive. The lawyer for the hospital called it one of the most harrowing accounts they'd ever heard. The fact that I'd been so close to death, legally sanctioned death, because of a forged document and a greedy sibling sent chills through the courtroom. They reviewed the evidence, the scans showing active brain function, the nurse's note, the forged power of attorney. Linda didn't show up. Her lawyer tried to minimize her role. She was under emotional stress, he said. She believed he was gone. She thought she was honoring his wishes. But no amount of legal gloss could erase the truth. I had been alive, and she had tried to erase me. Eventually, the hospital's legal counsel concluded that while their systems hadn't failed entirely, thanks to the vigilance of that one nurse, there were dangerous gaps. They issued a formal apology and made procedural changes, no withdrawal of life support without a second independent EEG mandatory communication trials, and a ban on verbal-only end-of-life claims without legal documentation. As for Linda, fraud charges were filed. A civil suit was opened. I didn't push for jail time. I didn't even ask for a dime of compensation. I just wanted her exposed. I wanted people to know what she was capable of behind her well-practiced tears, and most of all, I wanted to heal. Rehabilitation was slow, excruciating. I started by moving a finger, then my mouth, a toe. My speech slurred, my balance shaky, but every inch I reclaimed felt like a mountain climbed. Eva stayed with me the entire journey. She taught me how to use a special keyboard to type, how to speak with assistive devices. But more than that, she reminded me I was still a person, not just a patient. One night, while we were practicing vowels, she looked up and said, "You know your story's going to save lives." I blinked. I hope so. You've got one hell of a reason to keep going. And I did. Not just for me, but for every patient who's ever been trapped in a silent body screaming to be heard, for every person with no one to advocate for them, for everyone who might be dismissed as already gone just because they can't respond. Because I had lived through hell and my blink was the only match I had to light the way out. The first time I stood again with a walker, trembling legs, and 2 physical therapists flanking me, I cried. Not just because of the pain, though there was plenty. Not even because of the fear that I might fall. I cried because I was finally vertical again, looking the world in the eye, not from a hospital bed, but from my own strength. 3 months had passed since the blink that changed everything. I had been transferred to a long-term rehab facility specializing in stroke recovery. My speech was still slow and my right side remained partially paralyzed, but I had gained something far more important, my voice. My autonomy. News outlets started contacting the hospital. My story had gone viral. The man who blinked back became a headline on every platform, from local news to national talk shows. Of course, I couldn't do interviews, not in the traditional way. But I worked with Eva to prepare a video message. In it, I sat in my wheelchair looking directly into the camera and slowly spoke each word through text to speech. I was alive. I was aware. But I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. My sister tried to end my life for money, but one blink saved me. The message was shared millions of times. Letters poured in. People from all over the world, stroke survivors, families of brain injury patients, even doctors wrote to say thank you. One man from Italy wrote, "Because of you, I had them run a second EEG on my wife. She blinked too." That letter alone made everything worth it. As for Linda, her trial was scheduled for the fall. She disappeared from social media, cut ties with most of the family. My niece, her daughter, sent me a quiet apology. "I didn't know," she wrote. "I don't want to be like her." Good, I thought, because no one should be like her. I never got another message from Linda. No apology, no explanation, nothing. And that silence suited me just fine. She had spoken enough lies for one lifetime. I didn't need to hear any more. In early spring, they let me go home. It wasn't the same home I left the day I collapsed. I needed ramps, now specialized equipment, and in-home care. But it was mine, and more importantly, I was mine again. Every morning I sat by the window, a hot cup of coffee beside me, and stared out at the garden I once collapsed in. I had plans to return to it one day. Not yet, but someday. Because now every breath felt like defiance. Every word a miracle. Every blink a second chance. And I had no intention of wasting it. If you've made it to the end of my story, thank you for listening, for caring, and for remembering that a silent body does not mean a silent soul. My journey was never just about surviving my sister's betrayal. It was about reclaiming dignity, about teaching others that consciousness isn't always visible, that human value isn't measured by movement or speech. If you have a loved one in a hospital bed, don't assume the worst. Talk to them. Look them in the eyes. Hold their hand. Sometimes the smallest response, a blink, a tear, a flicker, can mean everything. Believe in them when they can't ask you to. And if you're ever given power over someone else's life, wield it with reverence, not convenience. Mercy and murder wear the same face if guided by greed. I live because one nurse chose to see me. Be that person for someone else.